Hello there, and welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen. Wherever you are, whenever you might be listening to this, I really appreciate you checking out the show. If it's your first time here, welcome. This is a show where we're taking a journalistic look at all things cannabis. I'm a broadcaster in Chicago. I do news and traffic on the radio, and I've been a personal cannabis user for about 18 years. I leaned on it initially because it helped me get to sleep at night. I found it was a helpful tool to combat things like anxiety, nausea, or other stomach discomfort, and just all sorts of unpleasant feelings that sometimes come at the cost of living on this planet that we all share. And so almost 2 years ago now, I decided to start this podcast where I wanted to speak with experts in this field and do my own effort to try and normalize and destigmatize cannabis. Just kind of talk to people who are in the space and who've made the discovery that a lot of us have, which is to say that cannabis is something that brings a lot of quality of life improvements to our lives, and more people, as it's getting legalized across the U.S. and in countries around the world, are finding that cannabis is something that has a place in their lives more than some substances that are so normalized by society like alcohol. And so I think just having conversations with people who are making new products and services in the space, as well as researchers or doctors who are doing studies on the plant, trying to answer some of the questions we still have, or government leaders, policy leaders, people who are in offices that are responsible for setting up cannabis laws and establishing policies that are going to be the future for legal cannabis down the line. Bringing these conversations to you and just kind of talking about cannabis news and events, as well as bringing you some perspective about these developments and kind of chronicling this journey as we're moving toward legalization here. That's sort of the purpose behind this Cannabis Man podcast. I have one of those interviews for you coming up later this episode. I'm speaking with someone from Green Thumb Industries. You know them from the Rise dispensaries around Illinois, including the one in Mundelein, which is having a big party later today from when this episode's coming out, and I'll have all the information for you. It sounds like a great time. I've also got some news stories that I thought were worth bringing to your attention, as well as some other events that are coming up related to cannabis in or around Illinois, and I'll talk to you about what I've been smoking on and kind of what my experience has been like over the last week, and maybe get you some ideas of what cannabis products you want to stock up on for your weekend. If you would be so kind, please leave a rating or a review for this show, whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, YouTube, whatever. Any of the podcast platforms, leave a rating or review if you like the show. If it's YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button, and do subscribe to the show. Scroll down into the description notes and hit that support the show link. Become a subscriber, and you'll get an email thanking you from me, as well as a shout out in the following episodes. And follow the show at C-Man Podcast on X and Instagram, the Cannabis Man Podcast on Facebook, or if you have any feedback for guests or questions for me or products that you think are worth trying, email host@cannabismanpodcast.com. Either way, seal up that joint, pack that bowl or the bong, and crack that drink. Whatever it is you got going, strap in for this episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast. Here we go.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis broadcast.
Alrighty, and we're into the show now. I've got my coffee going here. My wife went over to this local coffee shop, Metropolis Coffee Company on Granville in Edgewater here. They always have some really excellent brews. We always grab bags of coffee from there to bring home and just make more of, and they've got some good specials if you like lattes or espresso or whatever, as well as croissant and breakfast pastries, stuff like that. So she went ahead and got us some coffee and bagels and such. So I've got my Mocha Java right here. Love combining coffee and cannabis whenever I have the opportunity to do that. Coffinibus, perhaps. And what I've been smoking on a lot of this week was I was actually gifted some cannabis. A cousin of mine who lives on Maui, where my wife and I honeymooned, actually. Very jealous of my cousin Nate, who moved out to that island. And he's got a cannabis farm going there with some friends of his, and so Nate was kind enough to send me just a little bit, like a little care package of a couple of different strains that they've grown. One of them is named Tropical Runts, and I've been a big fan of it. I can really taste the limonene terpene. It definitely has some fruity, citrusy kinds of tastes, and I find it to be more uplifting. It feels to me like it leans a little heavily toward the sativa side. Relaxing, euphoric, typical kind of creative energy that I really like and vibe with in a strain, so thanks very much, Nate, for the Tropical Runts. Maui-grown stuff is quite good whenever I'm lucky enough to get to try some of what Nate is growing out there. It's a lot like the Emerald Triangle grown stuff in Northern California, as well as that Pacific Northwest in Oregon or Washington State. Lots of people over the decades have just talked about the great quality of crop that comes from those areas, and Maui seems to have very similar conditions and cranks out similar levels of quality product. I know Maui and the rest of Hawaii is just medical right now. They're very strict about their cannabis laws over there, but I know the governor is exploring potentially legalizing cannabis. I know most states are at least considering it, but I've heard that governor speak positively about the possibility. So that might be something coming down the line, and either way, if you ever have the chance to try some Hawaii or certainly Maui-grown cannabis, do yourself a favor and get on that. Even though it's medical only, one thing that's nice is they have an out-of-state patient portal where you can register with your in-state medical card. Like, I'm an Illinois med card holder, and when we were there on honeymoon, I was able to register as a medical patient from Illinois, and my registration from this state was active over there for the 2 weeks that we were there. And so I was able to go to some of their dispensaries and try some of their other products, and man, Maui-grown stuff really is tops, so I can't recommend it enough. And whatever you're smoking right now, cheers. I hope it's a great day and heading into a wonderful weekend for you. Wahoo! I'm actually smoking it out of my dugout, the little wooden container with the metal tube that looks kind of like a cigarette. You can usually catch me with this around Chicago. I've been bringing it downtown since I was at Columbia and stuff, and just kind of utilizing it wherever I can. And since cannabis has been legalized in Illinois, I know I am certainly not the only one to do that. Anybody who's walked in or around the city over the last couple of years has been able to smell that that's the truth. Now let's roll right into the News Joint Wrap, which is brought to you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Think of it as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. I went through a few big news stories last week. I just want to give you some highlights of what Jason Brown has been putting out on the site. There are events to talk about. Sour Diesel Group is ready to host 420 Illinois Festival. This is going to be at the Logan County Fairgrounds at Woodlawn Road in Lincoln on April 20th. It is going to be an open consumption event, which is always fun. Music acts, vendors, and more. They bill the event as Illinois 420 Festival as the ultimate gathering for all cannabis enthusiasts. Get ready for a day filled with dank vibes, groovy music, and good times. The scheduled music acts will be announced soon. One event to be excited about. Another one is the eve of the Eclipse Cannabis Carnival set for April 7th. This is one of two cannabis events being produced by Illinois News Joint Events. This is in collaboration with the city of Carbondale, and it's being billed as a masquerade and cosplay party, a free event to all adults 21 and older. This is running from 3 to 10 p.m. on April 7th of 2024. Complimentary cannabis bars, vendors, masquerade costume contests, games, and prizes. So you can get all the information you need about the eve of the Eclipse Cannabis Carnival Carnival there. Both of those sound really fun. Some really cool things coming up in April here. Several reviews lately, including Point Break by Nez, Salted Caramel Chocolates by Fully Baked, RSO and CBN Capsules by The Botanist, and Lusty Lady by Caviar, as well as an article outlining 6 steps for how to roll the prettiest joint at the party. You can find more information about all of those events, as well as news stories about cannabis in and around Illinois, all at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Listener, my guest today is going to share some exciting news. There's a cool event coming up at the Rise location, that dispensary in Mundelein. You've heard me talk about them before. I actually visited that location for my bachelor party last year and was able to kind of lounge at that lounge and kind of hang out with my friends and smoke and consume some great cannabis products leading up to my wedding and all that. It was a great celebration. I had a great time there. And they actually have a wonderful, fun event, which should be another great time, coming up there today from when this episode is coming out. There is a band that has launched their own cannabis strain in partnership with Green Thumb Industries, which is the company behind the Rise dispensaries. And there's a meet and greet there and an opportunity to try some of this exclusive new strain, which came out of this partnership with the band. And here to talk about all of these is somebody who's been with GTI for 7 years. He's the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships, also known as the GTI guy. Listener, please welcome Armon Vakili. Welcome, Armon.
Thanks for having me, Don. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time. It is very exciting. I've talked on the show a lot about the Rise dispensaries. I am close enough to the Rise in Niles. My mom still lives in Morton Grove, and so I kind of am in that area, and I shop there whenever I can because they usually have good deals. As much as I love the Wrigleyville Sunnyside, which is closest to me, the Rise in Niles usually has great deals, and being able to hang out at that Mundelein location was a great time for me. I really enjoyed just the experience of being able to buy some products and lounge with friends and all of that. So just starting with you, what was it that kind of brought you into the cannabis space and working with Green Thumb?
For sure. And I guess first off, let me say appreciate you for being a customer and for being an advocate up there. We love having you. Let me know next time you're up there. We definitely got to meet up.
Oh, will do.
Yeah, I love being the GTI guy. I'll make sure we make sure we treat you well up there. So for me, my quick introduction. Yeah, so I started Green Thumb back in 2017, and it just was kind of out of luck. I was finance professional at a couple different businesses before that, all in Chicago area, and wanted to continue to keep doing what I do in the finance department, which is how I got my first kind of position here at Green Thumb. And cannabis was kind of new, especially in Chicago, and so it piqued my interest, and here we are 7 years later.
Right on. Yeah, that makes sense. It's cool that you came from the Chicago area. I know that opinions are mixed. I've got a lot of listeners who, like myself, are into supporting the Illinois companies. I always try and tell people to buy locally cannabis in Illinois to support the companies that came from here. But I know that some people, especially as we look at social equity components and whatnot, some people, they look differently on supporting stores that are operating in multiple states. These are the bigger companies like the Green Thumb Industries, for instance. But I love what has been going on at the Rise stores myself. I mentioned the deals that I get. I also like a lot of the brands. I've tried Rhythm. I like the dog walkers. I've mentioned those several times on the show. I love how convenient those short pre-rolls are. The Incredibles brands, Bebo, I think, and then there's the N Shine. I wanted to bring that up with you, Armon, because I don't hear enough credit for people associating the dispensary's Rise with the brand and Shine, like Rise and Shine. And I remember when I first saw these come out, and I was like, why isn't anybody giving some credit here? Because that's a great dovetail. It's a great tie-in between product and dispensary,
Yeah, no, we appreciate you recognizing that. I think that's helpful to hear, and that's definitely the intent there. I think the moral of the story for us is like we love hearing this because we actually deeply care about what we're putting on the shelf from a brand perspective. I think what you mentioned earlier is it's not fully unwarranted, right? There is a lot of these kind of public or multi-state operators that some of the core thesis to what we're doing gets lost by them, right? Like, at the end of the day, we're all about what's in that jar. like really good quality flower cannabis product that is enjoyable to smoke. Forget about everything else. Like that's kind of period right there. And I think a lot of that is because we're all, candidly pretty big consumers here, kind of from the top down. I don't know. I can only speak to our own company that way. I'm not sure how the others operate, but we hope that speaks through the branding, and it's not just another, public kind of multi-state operator. It's like really core to the roots of where we're at in every state. And, we have the benefit of we're Chicago bred, and that is our home state to begin with anyway. So it's an extra emphasis on that.
Right on. Yeah. And I love that. I think that sense of coming from a local place and having this, as large as it ever gets, but the fact that the genesis was from here, I do think some of that is starting to come through. I know the popularity of the dog walkers, for instance, you see a lot of these products now, the short pre-rolls in these kind of convenient packages, but dog walkers were really the first ones that I saw. And now it seems like they're on every dispensary shelf, and those are like the most popular. And I've talked on the show before about how convenient pre-rolls are. I think that's a big part of why they're so appealing. But it seems to me like what everyone's kind of trying to do is chase what the dog walkers have done, which is kind of establish this brand of like small, easy to open containers, shorter pre-rolls that, are, again, just like the rise and shine tying in. You've tied in this activity of burning a pre-roll over the length of time it takes to walk a dog. And I think that sort of effort to kind of tie the branding in with the activity, which is a pleasant activity for a lot of people, get outside, but spend that amount of time out there. I think that's well done, and it seems to me like everyone else is kind of trying to chase that,
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That just speaks to the genius of our CEO, founder, Ben Kovler. Dog Walkers was born by him, 10 years ago out of the love for his dog and for smoking, and the exact same reasons that you just mentioned there. His dog, she's passed since, but her name was Bailey. If you open up the tin of dog walkers, you'll see her inscription on every tin and a little note from Ben. And that's, again, it's at the core of what we do. We put stuff in packaging and in products and in jars and in tins that we actually like to consume, that we care about consuming, because we're all consumers. And hopefully that resonates. And, with folks like you who definitely resonate with it, we appreciate that.
And Bailey is such a great dog name. My aunt Nancy, her dog's name is Bailey. And I remember the first time opening up one of the containers and seeing the picture in there. It's pleasant. It's a positive impact, that people are, it reminds me of kind of like when Snapple would put like the little jokes on the insides of their caps. And
Right.
It's just a positive spin to associate with opening of the package, which I think is cool too. So we've talked a little about, sort of the effort that goes into the products. I'm also a big fan of the Rhythm flower. I know that, there's many others that are into those as well. I feel like the price point's good. The quality's really good. But now you guys have even, more exciting. You've got another kind of exclusive brand coming up of flower here. And this has to do with a partnership with a music group. And this is all tied in with this event that's happening at the Rise Mundelein location later today. So you want to talk a little about this new cannabis strain and kind of the event later?
Yeah, of course. So our main flower brand, premium cannabis flower brand, is called Rhythm, as we mentioned a couple times already. And really at the ethos of the brand is the intersection of cannabis and music. Even just from the basis of the name itself, right? It's, again, goes to speak to the genius of our CEO founder, who really has a couple major passions in this world, and two of them are cannabis and music. And so this was a kind of natural evolution of the brand as we've continued to, just organically evolve as a company over the years, leaning into this music space. And so with that has come this new series that we're calling the Rhythm Artist Series. And at the core of it, what it is basically us, collaborating and kind of organically finding different partners and musicians and artists across many different genres of music that all share the same core organic love for smoking flower. And so we've done that here. We found 4 different artists, one of which is a pop punk band called State Champs. They're mostly out of the East Coast, but they kind of tour. They actually just got back from Europe like 3 days ago from a tour with Simple Plan over there. And those guys are just, again, they're really good guys who love to smoke and love to consume. And they mesh well with, our interests and our desires and what we look for in the brand representation. And we collaborated and created a unique strain that is accustomed to their likes and their needs and their inspiration and what they like to smoke. And, out of that was born the strain Out of My Head, which is, a sub brand underneath Rhythm, along with our other artists that we're doing under this series, the Rhythm Artist series.
That is so cool. I love the idea, that you just spelled out there, how you guys identified this great overlap between cannabis and music. I definitely think one of the archetypal moments of any journey of any stoner is sort of, smoking a little bit or consuming cannabis and then putting on some album and just really being transported to another place. You thought you loved it before, but all of a sudden you're just appreciating it on new levels. And that marriage of cannabis and music, as you said, it is very strong. And so I just think that this is another example, like the Rise and Shine kind of a really great tie-in that you guys have identified here between having musicians who have their own vibe with the music they create and the shows that they put on, and you are collaborating with them, and you're bringing to people an exclusive cannabis strain, which, ideally I think tries to cultivate maybe a similar vibe. And you've done that here with the State Champs and this Out of My Head strain, which I guess is, it comes from a song off their new album, Kings of the New Age, which is really cool. I mean, all of this kind of being able to have a song title that maybe people, nowadays who might try this Out of My Head strain, who might smoke the flower, they really like it. Now to have an experience where you could be a stoner, you can go to a show, listen to this band that you enjoy, and you hear this song right after maybe you smoked some of that flower. I just think this is an example of one of the things that is so cool about the cannabis space right now, which is to say there's all this innovation, and it allows people like myself and anybody else who wants to, consume cannabis. It's giving us consumers new experiences to try out. It's allowing us to try cannabis in a new way, or in such a way, tying it into something like this, tying it in with a song and a band that the depth of experience, I think, is just going to be so cool for people to try out because, again, this is something that, because it's been prohibited, because cannabis has been illegal for so long, this level of experience, this level of being able to try it hasn't been out there before. So I guess I just want to say really well done again, because it seems like, Snoop Dogg is not the only musician to enjoy cannabis or tie that in with the brand. He's just the most famous, but I think music and cannabis, like I said, go well together. So I think a lot of people should maybe be excited to check out what you guys have coming up here.
Yeah, no, 100%, Don. You hit it on the head. It's like, it's peanut butter and jelly, if not better, right? It works well together. It has for centuries, if not longer. So we're not really necessarily creating anything new. We're just leaning into something that already is such an authentically natural fit out there for cannabis and music consumers alike. Like this it makes a lot of sense. And, you mentioned Snoop Dogg, and we have a lot of respect for him and a lot of other, artists who we know are authentically consumers who try to create their own brand. What the difference is here is like, there's a lot of influencers and cannabis brands that can get together and try to do something, right? That's not new. What we're trying to do is a little bit different, where we're really trying to take our time to find artists who not only are influential, like a Snoop Dogg would be, but are truly authentically desiring to have their name be part of a platform that's already trying to do big things in the space and really cares about the product. So it's like a twofold. You need the influencer part of it, that they're, organically interested in the product. And then you also need the company and the brand who has built a platform that I can actually execute on that. And we think this Rhythm Artist series is the perfect combination of that.
Yeah, it sounds like it to me. And I think, you touched on something that's crucial. I think, all marketers are chasing it, but it's the thing that really cuts through all the noise, which is authenticity, and that part of it. And I think, you guys are on the right track here in identifying which musicians you're collaborating with and kind of the right people to create these products and experiences from the ground up. And, as you were just kind of touching on, not really just necessarily glomming on to an influencer that's already out there, but basically building something up from the ground with people who maybe don't have, such a large crowd already understanding where they're coming from, or even if they do, but that authenticity is really the most important thing. And it sounds like, you guys are on the right track with that. So listener, if you're interested, the Rise in Mundelein is at 1325 Armour Boulevard, and this meet and greet is running from 2 to 4 p.m. later today. The store's open at noon, and you can get out there and get in line and, hopefully have a chance to meet the band and maybe smoke a little bit of the new strain. It does sound like a really great time. And like I said, I think that there are not many experiences like the Rise in Mundelein that are open and out there for people just yet, in terms of being able to go to a place, buy some product, and kind of hang out and actually consume it with your friends or whatever, and just kind of linger there in that vibe instead of just buying and having to dip and then consume it elsewhere. I just think even going there to experience something like that is cool, and being able to go and do an event like this where there's something new and fun and people to meet, and kind of the excitement that's so prevalent in the cannabis space in general. These events and stuff like this, they're really kind of high points for people to tap in and feel stuff like that. So again, bravo and well done, and just keep up the great work, Armon. I think the stuff that's going on at GTI is excellent.
Yeah, no, appreciate you saying all that. And, just as a quick also reminder, State Champs, pop punk band, I'm sure a lot of listeners here are into that music, me included. I'm a huge fan of that music. But we've really done a lot of work to make sure we have a diverse range of artists here as part of this first wave of what we call the artist series. So we already had in Illinois and in Nevada and Massachusetts a brand underneath another artist launch a couple months ago. His name's Mitchell Tenpenny. He's a country musician. Again, very authentically funny and really into the product. State Champs is today, as you mentioned. And then coming up soon, we have another artist. His name is Marcus King, who's kind of a southern rock, bluesy, really soulful, unique vocalist who's coming out with his own strain underneath this artist series that will also be available at Rise Mundelein and other Rise stores in Illinois in about a month. And then we've got a fourth artist coming down the pike about 3-4 months from now. Her name is Tinashe. She's a very, very well-known R&B and pop singer. So that's kind of the full portfolio of what we've got to offer in Illinois and other states as well. And we're excited to have all the feedback.
Wow, yeah, that is awesome. Thanks for spelling that out, Armon, because I do think, if people can't make it to today's event, that's one thing, or if maybe they just vibe with a different genre of music, it's really cool to know that you guys are partnering with musicians in other genres as well, and are giving people future opportunities to come and check out some of these, the new cannabis strains you guys are doing, partnering and creating flower with some of these musicians who are creating music that lives in kind of different spaces and creates different vibes. Again, I think this is really, really cool, and it sounds like the kinds of innovation that are happening at GTI, it seems to me like you guys are kind of looking at the right places, which is to say it's not just about like a money grab in terms of what product can we create that's going to make people, flock to dispensaries. But it seems to me like it's more about you guys are creating a vibe with the products and the partnerships with either people creating them or, like you say, kind of these musicians who create a vibe in their own way, but it works really well with the cannabis products that Green Thumb is creating. Just in terms of future products, if you can, what sorts of products, looking down the line, aside from partnerships like these, music groups and just straight flower, is there anything that Green Thumb is looking at to bring to people in the future from dispensary store shelves?
Great question. Yeah, I can't give away too many of the secrets because we like the element of surprise and making sure that people really are excited about what comes out. But I will say, like, our innovation team we've got an innovation team that's focused on this all day, every day, and just kind of zooming out even from that. Like I said at the beginning, I don't mean to keep harping on it, but it's so true. We all are just real, authentically lovers of the plant. Like, we all consume on a daily, weekly, kind of recurring basis, and that in itself sparks creativity and innovation naturally across the board. So while we have an innovation team that's focused on exactly what you just asked, ideas come from all walks of life, from top all the way down to the bottom and anywhere in between. So with that said, that's just to give you a little taste of, there's a lot of cool stuff we've got cooking up, and we're excited to bring it all out there and continuing to think creatively and outside the box.
For sure. Yeah. And it sounds like, I think everyone should be confident that you guys are going to keep on cranking out good stuff as you have been. I mean, as we talked about, the products that have come from the beginning, the Rhythm Flower, the Dog Walker pre-rolls, and as well as, like I talked about, the N Shine kind of cartridges and the vapes. I really think that you guys are coming from the right place. And when you say to me that the people in the company are, regular consumers of the plant, it definitely, to me anyway, this is coming through from the products and the branding that end up on store shelves anyway. It does seem like from everything that's on the shelves and the bud tenders that I've dealt with at the Rise dispensaries, I think the authenticity of you guys being consumers, it is coming through from what you guys are giving to others in this state as well. So just keep up the great work, I guess is what I wanted to say there.
No, thank you. And again, that's just bring it all back to the Rhythm Artist series, which I know is the genesis of this conversation. That is at the core of why we think this will be successful, because all of our artists that we've partnered with, they're the same way. They are authentically actual. They've chosen a collection of strains here that I can attest are amazingly effective and amazingly delicious, but they're all unique and different because they speak to their own inspirations, their own tastes, their own desires, their own lifestyles. But they're all actual strains that these artists smoke while they're out on, before or after their show, on the tour bus, in their downtime. That's the only way this works in our mind. And so we're really excited and appreciate all the kind words you said, Don, because it's exactly how we think about it. Well,
again, just thank you for stopping by today, Armon, and thanks for the great work you're doing at GTI. Listener, one more time, if you want to head to that Rise in Mundelein later today to check out this event and try some of this new strain. It definitely sounds exciting to me. And Armon Vakili of GTI, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships, thank you for stopping by today. And do keep up the great work. I hope we can talk again in the future.
Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you.
Here's a news story that I thought was worth bringing to your attention, listener. The headline is, Young Americans are 5 times more likely to smoke cannabis than cigarettes, Gallup poll shows. Overall, 17% of Americans say they smoke cannabis compared to 12% who reported smoking any cigarettes in the past week. The difference is especially stark when it comes to younger adults. Among those 18 to 34 years old, 26% said they use marijuana compared to just 5% who smoke cigarettes. 35 to 54-year-olds, it's 18% who smoke cannabis compared to 16% of cigarette smokers. And then adults 55 and older, they still are slightly more likely to smoke cigarettes in the past week, 13%, than those who say they smoked cannabis, which was 11%. I find that this poll, I'm encouraged by it, but I also see that it reflects the trends that I've noticed anecdotally as well, and that I've read in lots of publications, other polls, as well as books like iGen by Gene Twenge or Twenge. It talks about those born from 95 to about 2013-ish, Gen Z or iGen if you like. And she speaks exactly about this, that generation is much less likely to smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol, and they're much more likely to smoke a joint or consume cannabis in some regard. Another big reason why it feels like the momentum in favor of legalization or certainly decriminalization and then just further normalizing cannabis is that the young people are already reflecting that trend. We are seeing the future play out right now. I mean, we'll know for certain when we get some generation as they grow up, Generation Alpha, the ones that are, growing up right now, born after 2012, 2013-ish. We'll see if the trend continues at the same rate, but either way, this kind of shows where things are headed, and again, just reinforces the notion that rescheduling, or hopefully eventually decriminalizing entirely, it's not a question of if, but when. And one more thing I wanted to discuss with you this week, listener, was I ran through an article that was published in journals.sagepub.com. I'll share this one with you. It is very complex. It's a study on the effects of stigma stigma, older persons, and medicinal cannabis. And this is not really an article summarizing, this is the full study. And so it is complex, it's weighty, but I wanted to go through at least a little bit of the findings and the discussion because I bring up stigma all the time on the show. And when I saw the findings of this study, I thought it was a great look into the real life effects of what these stigmas are doing in people's lives. So the entire study, they introduce it, they talk about their methods, they talk about the data collection. It's a well-conducted study, it's valid. But for the purposes of time and just kind of keeping it simple, I'll just go through their discussion of kind of the findings. So one of their key findings was that older adults' past experiences with cannabis as an illicit substance and the enduring stigma associated with it contribute to many believing they may be judged for consuming cannabis, even if it is for medicinal purposes. To manage stigma, participants concealed, reframed, and refocused their consumption, as well as proselytized to others, try and convert them to their system of beliefs about the benefits of medicinal cannabis. Most participants demonstrated or hinted at stigma regardless of whether they were a long-time cannabis consumer or had started consuming as an older person. Although there was variation in descriptions of stigma among participants, those who had consumed cannabis throughout their lives and those who had consumed as a youth were more likely to express the desire to conceal their consumption. Another key finding was that many participants were reluctant to disclose their medicinal cannabis consumption to their healthcare professionals, and those who did often encountered stigmatizing attitudes. This finding parallels previous research. They cite another study, for example, compared cannabis consumers' perceptions of stigma in European countries and found that healthcare providers often held stigmatizing views about cannabis and cannabis consumers. They go on to say their study adds to the debate regarding the intersection of medicalization and normalization. This is something I've heard anecdotally as well. There are people that have gone to their doctors, they talk about cannabis use. I've experienced this myself. I've gone to a doctor, I tell them about my cannabis use, and their attitude toward me changes. And it's not a positive change. This is a healthcare setting. This is something that this study is talking about exactly this. That is a place where we have this thing that is now more and more widely medicinally legal. 37 states, 38, I believe, and counting, as well as other countries around the world. And yet, this stigma exists even among doctors and other healthcare professionals. So while the substance gets legalized medically or recreationally in some cases, but at least in the states where it's only medical, people are still going to their doctors, and their doctors are still kind of pushing back and reflecting the same old attitudes, the same old stigma, and that's just recycling and refueling this problem. They go on in more detail about those findings and the discussions surrounding them, but I scroll down to the implications portion of this, and I'll read just a bit. Understanding older adults' stigma management behavior related to medicinal cannabis will help to inform knowledge products and provide guidance to healthcare professionals in their conversations with this population. The frequent occurrence of older adults being discouraged from consuming cannabis by a healthcare provider or their provider being unknowledgeable is problematic. They're finding that longtime cannabis consumers were less likely to disclose their use to healthcare providers suggests the importance of healthcare professionals inquiring about possible use in a non-judgmental manner. Now, this next line, I want to preface this by saying this is what scientists do. They are being equitable. They have to mention, to be fair, they have to mention the risks that do exist. But like a lot of things in life, this is a weighing of potential risks versus potential benefits. And so they say, while the literature indicates that older cannabis consumers are at risk of developing psychosis as well as diminished attention, memory, and learning, and then in parentheses, and then one can thus understand why physicians are reluctant to recommend or authorize it, this is the key point. There is also early evidence suggesting that cannabis is effective for treating numerous conditions. Furthermore, given that older adults are actively seeking cannabis as a potential treatment, it is crucial that healthcare healthcare providers are open to discuss it and sufficiently informed to credibly answer older adults' questions. Now, on that note, there are some cannabis practitioners. That's what the people who are making an effort to stay informed on cannabis literature and who are practicing healthcare advice. These cannabis practitioners can tell people how to maybe integrate cannabis into their lives. And just like any other healthcare professional, you want to do some research and ideally figure out whether or not these people are reputable. But the fact is, there are reputable and professional cannabis practitioners out there. And if you're curious about cannabis, those are the people you should really be looking to ask. Hopefully, studies like these and more publications will continue to normalize and will help some of these healthcare professionals become more knowledgeable about it, as well as less stigmatized or more destigmatized about advising cannabis use. But until that happens, until that normalization reaches that level, seek out recommended and knowledgeable cannabis practitioners. Either way, that's all the time I have this week. I will share both of the articles that I brought up this week. You can read further about them, which I encourage you to do always. Reading is good, people. I'm a big proponent of reading. If you can't tell, words are something that I tend to nerd out over from time to time. And reading is just good for the mind. It's whether you're doing it, fiction for pleasure, or you're doing it to learn things, maybe explore some topics or improve your life or whatever. Reading is just a huge benefit. Anyway, be sure to follow the show on social media at C-Man Podcast. Rate, review, subscribe to the show. Click on that support the show link, head to the Buzzsprout page and become a subscriber there. And if you're in the mood for some coffee or Camp Craft cocktails sent right to your door, click on the Vouch store link in the description notes and that'll take you right to the page where you can order those too. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful weekend and we'll talk next week on the Cannabis Man Podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Goodson.